Hi there, and welcome to Scheduling Fate. I'm Jamie McGee. I'm an author, astrologer, and I love helping those around me unlock the magic within them and hidden in everyday moments. Here at Scheduling Fate, you're going to find grounded insight to help you co create with the beautiful, unfolding story of your life. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Hi there, and welcome in. All right, so today we have a pretty juicy topic, and it is, are you a psychic, a medium, or maybe both? And more importantly, how can you tell? What does your astrological birth chart say about it? So today we're going to dive into the difference between being a psychic and a medium, the natal placements, the clairs, and the transits and progressions that could awaken these senses, and how you can tune into your own energy if you feel like something's starting to awaken now. So be sure to grab your journal, your notepad, your favorite crystal, and definitely your birth chart. Now, if you do not have your birth chart, but you know your time of birth, you want to go to schedulingfate.com and you can download a free one. And that's going to help you understand where these energies are. At least take some notes on there. You'll be able to go back and dial in a little bit deeper to understand that one of a kind chart, because no one else on the planet has this chart. It's absolutely perfect and beautifully designed for you and your purpose in this lifetime. All right, so I want to give y'all just a little bit of a backstory as to why I was inspired to do this podcast. Now, just growing up deep in the South around a lot of very faithful and spiritual people, I have always had an underlined respect for psychics, mediums, those who are powerfully intuitive, because though I didn't understand what they were doing, I could feel or sense how empowering this energy was, which has always fascinated me, led me to learn even more about archetypes and astrology and esoterics and theology. I'm all in. And no matter how long I study, I always find myself in a different crevice, a different level, a different perspective, and understanding or experiencing something in a way that is absolutely profound. And I had a profound moment recently. Now, all of you know that I am a counseling astrologer. So I work one on one with clients every single day. And I work with clients from every walk of life. Sometimes we're just looking at the natal chart. We're understanding, yes, this is my divine path. This is my cosmic blueprint, and just getting that validation of individuality and why you're here. A lot of times I'm working with people trying to understand where they are in the dark night of the soul, or what opportunities they have, the timing, how they can quote unquote schedule your fate. But my clients are in every industry that you can imagine, including an industry of coaching around psychic and mediumship and opening your intuition and coaching you into experiencing your best life. And recently, I was working with a very long term client that I knew was a psychic and a medium and a teacher, all the things, Colleen. And in the middle of my consultation, I asked her a question about how she would coach or teach something. And the purpose of this question was for us to unpack how we could set this up in something that could be taught or coached or shared with other people. But once I asked this question, she's like, okay, Jamie, for instance, around you, there is always. And she gave me this beautiful, quick download of an energy that was always around me, something that no one would know. I mean, it's pre Facebook. It's not something that I share about. It's not something that I talk about. And it was very vivid and very powerful. And I will tell you, if you have never been around a medium or asked a direct question to a medium, be prepared for what they say back to you, because it's going to give you an energetic checkpoint. It's going to let you know where you are with this grief, with this energy that's coming through. It's going to say, you know what, you have processed, you have grown, you're still holding on to this. It has a beautiful opportunity to give you closure. But in order to close something, you have to open something back up. I mean, I'm telling you, it stilled me in the moment. And in that same moment, I kind of put up an academic wall, because even though I was feeling all this stuff flooding in, trying to understand how she was doing this, I was locked into her chart, a chart that I basically had memorized at this point. And I was watching how she was rhythmically using all of these energies in her chart. It's something that she does with clients all the time, but I had never been on that side of the table. And I was fascinated. I was absolutely fascinated by the power of these energies. It's something that I have read, I've written notes about, blogs about. I have definitely seen it from the academic side, but to watch it in motion and to feel the message come through, I can't explain to you how powerful that is. And it only lasted a couple of minutes because I wanted to make sure that maybe I was deflecting. I admit it. I wanted to put the energy back on Colleen's time, but I did give her validation as to why she was picking up on certain clairs. And we're going to talk about what clairs are in just a minute. And Colleen has this ability to work with several at the same time. And a lot of us do, but we don't even understand that we're doing it because we haven't been trained or taught or led to tap into these extra senses. In a lot of ways, they are suppressed. And right now, in the age that we're living in, there is an awakening. There is a quickening that's saying, you know what, let's tap into this supernatural power, this instinct, this intuition that you were born with. And I really hope that this podcast helps you either remember this energy or discover it within you, because in one way or another, somewhere in your chart, this energy is present. Now, some of us have a very heavy dose and load of this energy. And because they have that heavy dose, they've been through it. They've had some dark nights of the soul, but they've been through it. And now they are armored and they are teachers and they're ready to help you go through it or help you tap into your intuition. All right, so let's kind of dive in a little bit. I'm going to try to keep this as streamlined as possible. Let's start with the basics. A psychic is someone who can tune into the energy fields of thoughts and emotions and timelines, past, present, and a probable, quote unquote, probable future. You have free will on how you engage and use your energy. A medium, on the other hand, connects specifically with the spirit realm, whether that is people who have passed on, or spirit guides, or ancestors. Are able to tap into that energy. You can be a psychic without being a medium, but all mediums are psychic. It's a wider field of them to tap into. So we're going to talk about how your chart can reflect these gifts. But first, I want to talk about the quote unquote clairs. This is a term that is short for clair senses, which are intuitive abilities that correspond to the five physical senses, but they operate on a psychic or energetic level. They are how you can tune into the energy of spirit or higher consciousness, something that's beyond the physical 3D realm. So, we're going to do a quick rundown of these clairs. Now, I want to preface this by saying that you really have to think about the semantics of this. Because if you have someone who says, I have a vivid imagination or I can play a whole movie out in my head, that's actually a clairvoyant, or someone has a strong sense of smell or picks up something that's not there, or someone who reads the room. These are clairs that you're activating. So as I'm saying this, I want you to reflect on something you've always been able to do that you thought was normal and actually abnormal that, say, your partner or your friend couldn't do. Like, how can you not read the room, or how can you not see that, or do you not have an imagination? Kind of think about that as we're going through this. So the six major clairs are the psychic senses. Let's start at the top. We have clairvoyance. And that means clear seeing. So the ability to receive intuitive information visually, like images, symbols, colors, or visions. And it's often described as the mind's eye or an inner seeing, but this would also be someone who has a vivid imagination. You close your eyes, someone tells you something, and you are there. You are present in the story, and you're able to pick up even more things out of the story. That's clairvoyance. Clairaudience means clear hearing. And if you've ever said something like, this word keeps popping into my head, or this thought popped into my head, or I thought this, or you feel this nudging, you're using this clair. It's the ability to hear messages, sounds, or words from the spiritual realm. It can feel like an inner voice or even external sounds that other people don't hear, depending on how powerful or strong this energy is. And I actually have a good friend, Casey, who has this ability. It's very powerful to watch. And then there is clairsentience, and this is clear feeling. This is one of the most common clairs that we can all at some point say, yeah, I was able to do that. It's when you sense the emotions or the energy or the physical sensation from people, places, or even spirits. So if you ever walk through an antique store, a really old school or a really old home, like you can feel that energy, you can smell it, there's a vibration, or you walk into a room and you sense that there's people there that are friends or foes, despite what they're saying or they're doing. You can feel something coming from someone. You can't really define it or put your finger on it, but you have a good feeling. I'm sure all of you at one point or another have tapped into that. Claircognizance is clear knowing. Now, this is a deep inner knowing without any logical explanation. Think of an instant download or an information or an insight. You're pulling this wisdom out of the ethers and you're just kind of saying what you say, and you have a lot of confidence behind it, but you don't know why, but you know it. I'm sure a lot of you have felt that. These next two are interesting, and I think that they blend well with others. Some of you with strong psychic abilities have more than likely felt or melded a couple of these together. But the next one is, I'll do my best to pronounce, clairalience, and it means clear smelling. So this is intuitively smelling scents that are not physically there. So you may smell an old loved one's perfume or flowers or roses or something that doesn't have any resemblance of why it should be there. I actually remember being a very small child in an older house, and parents did not smoke, but all of a sudden get a whiff of a pipe or something around me. It was unnerving. I think I was under 7 when this happened, but I do remember this clair happening in my life. The last one is clair gustance, and this is tasting something without putting it in your mouth. This could be linked to some kind of spirit communication or a symbolic message. It's not one that I have ever witnessed or know of someone having, but it's definitely listed as one of the clairs. So the reason I took a second to talk about the clairs before we talk about the astrology is because if you understand what the clairs are, you're going to be able to tap into which one may be stronger for you now or in the past or is starting to bloom. This is going to help you connect with your intuition and your higher self, whatever spirit guide or faith or energy is helping guide you through this realm of life. It's going to help you receive that guidance and information as well. It will also open you up to strengthen that ability to manifest and lean into that intuition. So if you have this idea, then you get this message. One of the clairs starts to speak to you, and you're like, yep, I'm going to do this, or nope, that's a clear no. I'm feeling the no. I'm not going to fight the resistance. I'm going to lean into something that makes more sense to me. All right. So now that we have talked about the difference between a psychic and a medium and the clairs, let's dive into the astrology and talk about the areas or the houses and the placements that could give you this natural ability, this natal promise that you have always had, maybe not tapped into, but always had, or what could be activating or hushing some of these instincts that you have circulating around your natal chart, which you're experiencing in your world right now. And we're going to keep this very high level. So you don't need to know a lot of astrology, but definitely enough to intrigue you, maybe get you on a little research trail to kind of dig in deeper to your chart. Of course, I'm always here to work with you guys. You just need to go to schedulingfate.com and you can find out how to do that. All right. So, some things that we're going to talk about are the water signs, the eighth and the 12th house, even the fourth house, Neptune, Mercury, Pluto, and Uranus. Now, strong water sign placements. And I don't want you to tune out and say, well, I'm not a Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces, so this podcast is not for me. You have Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces somewhere in your chart. So, for example, if you're an Aries rising, you have a water sign in the 12th house or and the eighth house and the fourth house, those very spiritual realms. If you are a Leo rising, you have them in the very private realms. And if you are a Sagittarius rising, you have them in the private realms as well. And if you're not any of those risings or any of those water signs, we've already covered half the zodiac there with those six. The rulers of those signs could be in a water sign. There's definitely a connection somewhere, especially if those clairs I've already mentioned ring true. But why do we say that Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces may have a stronger influence? Well, these signs are naturally receptive to emotions and they are definitely tapped into the quote unquote unseen realms, especially if you have a moon, Neptune, or Pluto in any of these signs, or if they're angular. So let's talk about the signs just really briefly. So Pisces is traditionally ruled by Jupiter, but in modern times is ruled by Neptune, which is very much connected to the psychic realms. Pisces energy is, for lack of better words, otherworldly. People with strong Pisces influences often absorb energy, making them naturally psychic or empathic, which is why strong Pisces energy tends to escape. It needs to escape from the room because it's absorbed so much energy that it's not clear on where it needs to put its boundary. In other words, if it's around someone who's going through a hardship, it will absorb that hardship and it will be theirs. But in recent years, thanks to Saturn, we have been learning to stand with someone who's going through a hardship, have a healthy boundary. I have empathy for you, but I'm not going to let your energy flood into mine. But naturally, as you grow up, as you're learning that, it can be very difficult to understand how to have that boundary. And you may want to escape in unhealthy or healthy ways if you have really strong Pisces placements. Now, a Scorpio, this is a sign that's very psychological. Scorpio is traditionally ruled by Mars, but we have now assigned Pluto as the modern ruler of it as well. It is a sign of depth, like think DEPTH, but it's also a sign that has a lot to do with death and rebirth, a transformation. Think of a phoenix. I went into the dark night of the soul, this very powerful, overwhelming at times transformational period of life, but I rose powerfully through it. So if you have Scorpio placements, especially a moon Scorpio, this can give you a bit of an x-ray vision into the emotional or psychic undercurrents of others. And what I mean by this, I'm sure at one point in your life, this has happened to you. There is someone that everyone absolutely adores. Or they're just drunk on how beautiful and empowering this person is. But you kind of have this internal nudging that says, I don't know, there's something off here. I don't know what it is. There's something in the undercurrent that is not matching what is being projected to the world. And you know, you could figure out what that is within a few minutes. You know, you're a Scorpio, or it could be years down the road. You're like, yeah, I always knew it. I always knew that that was the truth there. That's a very strong Scorpio energy. They pick up on the undercurrents. This sign is ruled by the moon. It is connected to the collective intuition. It is very deeply intuitive. Those with strong Cancer placements can feel the energy shifts instantly. Like they're at a party and they're in the room and everyone around them smiling. They can sense if there's been an argument in the room next to them. They know when someone has put up a boundary, when someone is wide open. They can sense this without even trying to turn it on, especially when it comes to loved ones or something that gives them emotional security. And it's going to be very challenging in the younger years. It can also be challenging in the adult years when you have certain transits that start to activate that, and or if you were not taught or guided about how to work with this energy when you were younger. If you didn't have good emotional reflections or a good emotional sanctuary to express how you felt. And here's a tip for those who are astro geeks here. When someone has a grand trine in water signs or multiple planets in the water houses, 4th, 8th, and 12th, they often are going to have a natural built in spiritual sensitivity. And they may not even realize that it's different from other people. Now, I want to talk about a couple of house placements. But before I do that, I want you to take a look at the chart that you're looking at and notice if it's in whole sign or if it's in Placidus or any other house system, because there's multiple house systems. And the reason I want you to notice that is that because whole sign, no matter what degree of your ascendant, is going to begin that first house. So you could have a 29-degree ascendant, but whole sign is going to declare that that entire house belongs to that ascendant. Now, if you were to look at that same chart in, say, Placidus, it would push a lot of those energies up into the 12th house. So definitely pay attention to what house system you're using, kind of bounce it back in your head, or look at both first and 12th house or eighth and seventh. Like there's a bit of a give there. Like you feel that energy in both houses. You can experience it this way or that way or both ways at the same time. And I can personally testify to this because I have a late degree rising and I either have powerful 12th house placements or powerful first house placements. And there are times that I dive deeper into one of those than the other. One is very private, it's behind the scenes. That's when I'm doing my research. That's when I'm writing. That's when I'm kind of digging into things that only I can do by myself, my spiritual work, my faith. And then there's times that I'm out here with a microphone talking to all of you about everything that I'm doing. All right. All right. So, end of side note, back into focus, the 12th house placements. The 12th house in some studies would tell us that every house belongs to us except for the 12th, and the 12th belongs to a higher power. It's the subconscious. It's where we have faith in our spirituality. It's the realms that we can't tap into, but inherently govern our mind and body balance, which folds into our more public areas of our life. It's connected to the spirit world, it's connected to dreams and intuition. So, planets in the 12th house, especially the moon and Neptune, Pluto, or even Mercury, can indicate some psychic abilities, or at least able to receive some psychic downloads, dream works, or gifts, mediumship abilities, the ability, and especially if there's outer planets. Now, if there's outer planets, that's when you would hear like a medium or a psychic say something like, well, my guides are telling me, or I feel guided to say this, or there's this intuition that's leading me into this direction. If you have the moon or Neptune or Mercury or the sun or Venus in 12th house, those will all activate something, whether that is heightened intuition or feeling as if you're channeling or getting great downloads, or you're hearing spirit guide you, or you feel open to the mission that life is giving you, or you have this very empathic energy that you're working with. Now, the 12th house isn't just this place of sensitivity, it's also a portal. So when it's activated, people here can feel deeply psychic, but they can also feel like they need to isolate so they can recharge and process whatever just happened or whatever they're going through. So there might be someone in your life, or you may find that you at times you just need to isolate so you can figure out where you are and where you're going from here. Now, the 12th house is enshrined with the fourth. It's also enshrined with the eighth. We're not going to talk about the fourth today. We're going to talk about the eighth. But I want to kind of put a side note here. That fourth, think about the tree of life, those very strong, powerful roots that kind of just go down forever. That's ancestral energy. That 12th house and 8th house are in flow with ancestral energy. So if you have strong 4th house placements, not only are you very aware of what grounds you and you have this foundational energy, it could be challenging depending on the planets there, but you have this power to tap into ancestral energy, ancestral wisdom that comes up through you. And that could be where some of that knowing comes from. And when you have planets transit through here, that could activate or suppress it. If you have Saturn come through there, you could feel like you really have to tap into the wisdom and the structure of your past, but you could also have this invitation to listen to your voice and not to follow what was done before. That's when you decide, does it continue with me? Does it end with me? Do I branch off? How do I build this path? So definitely pay attention to the planets that are in your 4th house as well. Now, the 8th house, there's a little signature here that would call this almost the medium's gateway. Because the 8th house, which is where Scorpio would be in the natural flow, governs death and rebirth and transformation. It's a portal to some of those more shadowy energies. We have to go through the dark night of soul in order to rise like a phoenix. It's a cosmic underworld. People with very strong placements here are meant to transmute and guide others through these energetic realms. And I will say that not everyone, quote unquote, that's not a blanket statement because I know people in my family who have a very strong eighth house placement. They have been through a lot of trauma, a lot of issues that happened early in age, just because that's how their chart reflects. And at this point, they're not out there coaching and teaching people. They are more so understanding the dynamics of life. And they find that they're being a guide or they're helping people like just in their local environment. They don't need a platform to help someone, but they encounter people that are in a situation that they're in and they're able to help them unpack it. Or they say, you know what, I see your shadows and they're going to dance just beautifully with mine because I accept and appreciate you for who you are. So just because you have these placements, don't think that I'm telling you that you have to get out there and coach. I'm telling you that these placements are giving you a spiritual armor to live out your purpose, to help others, whether that's saying a kind word to someone at the gas station, coaching a family member, or getting out there on a platform and saying, this is what happened to me. This is where I'm at. How can I help you with this energy? But we do find a strong mediumship that shows up in this area, whether you just kind of draw in the spirits or there's a message or there's this guiding light or you kind of know before you know, especially if Pluto rules this house or if it's activating the eighth house. And one of the reasons why is because the eighth house is where we face some of the biggest unknowns in life. We're never going to understand the passage between death and rebirth, not the physical death and rebirth, because we can't see on the other side of this. But this eighth house takes us through metaphysical death and rebirth. It helps us understand this is the death of the ego and the birth of the spirit. It's a very transmuted energy. It brings up a lot of legacy and ancestral energy and wisdom. There's a spiritual transformation. We understand why we have always carried this blessing and or curse and what do I want to do with this? Now, if you have a moon here or Pluto or Mercury or Venus in the eighth house, you're going to activate this energy a little bit differently. The moon is going to help you feel the undercurrents. Pluto will help you break patterns because you're able to see and transform. Mercury is going to help you communicate what other people cannot communicate. Venus and Mars are going to give you that heart based passion. Now, those are the signs in the houses. Let's talk a little bit about the planets. Now, one planet that is inherently wrapped around psychic and mediumship and just that intuition in general is Neptune. And this is a tricky planet because Neptune, a lot of times in our world, we want facts. We want to understand this is the truth, this is the clarity. Neptune does not offer that. Neptune, it's a very spiritual planet. And in some circles, they will tell you that Neptune is both a malefic, a challenging planet, and a benefic, a very beneficial planet. It honestly depends on what you're trying to use this energy for and understanding it. Because when it comes to tapping into these psychic and medium powers, is that spirit often speaks through symbols. It doesn't show up and say, hey, do this and don't do that. Like you're going to see the numbers, you're going to hear the song, you're going to feel something through a symbolic energy. And with that, how you interpret it matters. You can lean into an illusion, you can take that symbol and match it to what you want it to be, only to find out that's only going to work out short term, not in the long term. Neptune is a planet of divine inspiration. It gives you the ability to manifest and connect to something that is unseen but felt on a soul deep level. So, strong Neptune aspects, especially to the moon, Mercury, or sun, often point to a sensitivity to energy, psychic energy. Neptune dissolves boundaries. So, when it's active in your chart by transit or natally, you'll be able to move through these energetic fields in a unique way. It could be very beautiful, it could be very scary and challenging at the same time because there's no boundaries. Now, Mercury and Pluto are Mercury Neptune aspects. This is also interesting because you're probably thinking, Mercury, why Mercury? Mercury is a planet that can go to any realm. It can go to the underworld, it can go to the heavens. It's a communicator. It passes those messages. So, noticing where Mercury is in your chart and how it is connected to some of these outer planets like Neptune and Pluto or these houses will give you further indicators about which clair you tap into or how you use your intuition. A couple examples, Mercury and Pluto, that's the intuitive detective. You're going to figure it out. You're going to know why you have that vibe. Mercury and Uranus is going to give you lots of sudden downloads or flashes of insight. These are aha kind of people. Mercury and Neptune, you're often very poetic and dreamy. You're able to give a voice to spirit and help it express itself. Another example would be if you had Neptune in the first, that gives you this very ethereal presence. People may see you as mysterious or intuitive or very magical in how you bring in that energy. Now, I don't want to get too deep into the transits because I want to keep this very beginner friendly. But as far as those clairs, I want to kind of go back and give you a couple of placements. So you're like, wow, I do have that. That is in my chart. And again, if you need help, you can always reach out to me at schedulingfate.com. I'd be happy to work with you. All right. So if you have clairvoyance, you may notice in your chart that you have Mercury and Neptune aspects, or that you have Mercury in the water signs or in the 8th or the 12th, that you have Neptune in the 1st, 3rd, or 12th, or that your South Node, it has the 8th or 12th house placements, or heavy 8th and 12th house placements. Those are just a few things. The list honestly goes on and on. But if you feel like you're tapping into clairsentience, that's the clear feeling. You may have a lot of energy in Cancer, Pisces. You may have Neptune or Moon in the 1st house. You may have a fire Moon or a fire Mars, or Mars aspecting Uranus. Mars is a strong indicator because it has this intuition, this drive. Like, I know, I don't know why I know, but I'm going to go. You could have a strong South Node in the 4th or 12th houses, or a heavy 2nd, 4th, or 8th house energy. Now, clairaudience, if that one's signified with you, and remember, this is clear hearing, this has to do with Mercury. You could have Mercury in Pisces or Aquarius. You could have Mercury aspecting, activating Uranus and Neptune or Pluto, whether that's you were born with it aspecting or it's transiting, activating it. You could have Uranus or Neptune in the 3rd house. You're able to communicate what that is. You could have a South Node in the 3rd or 9th house, maybe an air moon in the water house, or a heavy 3rd or 9th house energy. Claircognizance, that's the clear knowing. You may have Pluto or Uranus in the 1st house. That's where you have that ancestral, I just know, because Pluto and Uranus are outer planets. You could have Uranus in aspect to Mercury, Sun, or the Moon. Those are sudden breakthroughs, especially if they're in the 12th or 8th house. You could have Jupiter in the 3rd house, well aspected. A Sagittarius Moon, Sun, or rising, or Mercury. Those are very, very popular when it comes to the clear knowing, and also Moon and Jupiter aspects. All right, I'm going to stop there. I don't want to go through all the different clairs because I feel like that definitely gives you enough to investigate. I want to wrap up this podcast talking about when or how these gifts could wake up or be suppressed. And that has to do with transits, progressions, and activation points. Now, remember, your chart is a natal promise. That energy is there. And at some point or another, there's going to be energies that are activated or suppressed, turned on or turned off. And then your conditioning, the lifestyle that you have chosen, that free will that you have embraced, that also allows things to either blossom or be suppressed. And at some point or another, especially when a fated purpose, a calling, the reason that you're here is activated, that can feel jarring. Like you got dunked into cold water and now you have to reassess where you are. And some people find that they're exactly where they need to be and that they find the courage and empowerment to step out and say, okay, this is what I need to do. And some people figure out that they're way off course and they have to readjust. And that could be a little bit disarming at times. But some transits that could activate this would be Neptune transiting Moon, Mercury, or the ascendant. Now, I want to just note as I'm recording this, Neptune just moved into a new sign, Aries. It will retrograde back into Pisces, but it is in Aries right now. If you have strong cardinal places, planets in Aries, Capricorn, Cancer, or Libra, and you have your personal planets there, Neptune is likely starting to activate. So that could give you heightened intuition or messages through your dreams or this openness to understanding spirit or what the cosmos are trying to tell you. Another activation point could be Pluto transiting the 8th or the 12th house. So, for instance, if you are a Pisces rising, Pluto just moved into your 12th house. If you're a Cancer rising, Pluto just moved into your 8th house. You get the idea. These big planets just shifted. Now, Uranus in itself brings sudden awakenings, a flash of insight, a spontaneous psychic opening. Now, I just want to back up a second and say Neptune, Pluto, and Uranus are all generational planets, which means that everyone born near or around you had these planets more than likely, unless they were like they are now, moving in the same sign. But they do not have them in the same house necessarily. And they do not have them activating the same personal planets necessarily in your chart. So there is a commonality, but there's also a unique energy. But Uranus brings up some of those midlife crises that we feel when we have Uranus opposite Uranus, or when we experience Pluto squares. We can feel this big collective shift in our generation, an awakening. So some of us are going through that right now because we have Uranus opposite Uranus, or we could be going through a square. And we want to dial into those because those opportunities, those awakenings let us know where our free will is taking us and how aligned we feel with our purpose and what we've manifested in our life and what we want to change. But Uranus is sudden insight, sudden breakthroughs, and inspiration. And right now, as I'm recording this, Uranus is nearing the end of its tour through Taurus, which is a fixed earth sign. It's going to dip into Gemini in 2025 and it's going to retrograde back. But we're going to change the tone from a very grounded earth sign to a mutable air sign. I wouldn't be surprised if topics like what we're talking about today becomes more relevant. More people are starting to talk about it because they're understanding how their thoughts lead their way in the manifestation and where they're getting these messages. Now, another transit would be Saturn in the 12th. Now, when Saturn transits the 12th house, and I'll side note this here, these planets are not a one and done thing. We don't want to say, well, Saturn's in the 12th house, I'm going through a spiritual awakening, done and done. Saturn in the 12th house can indicate a need to really rebalance mind and body to have healthy boundaries. It could bring in epic endings and beginnings. It could have something to do with father figures or authority figures. There's a lot of things that a planet can influence, and very rarely does it zone in on just one topic. And if it does, that one topic floods into several other topics naturally on its own. But when Saturn is in the 12th house, this is going to give you a lot of tests, especially spiritual tests about where your boundaries are, what you have suppressed, what's down there, what do you need to bring up in the subconscious body, and how is that impacting your mind and body balance and therefore every corner of your life. It could also give you a deeper commitment to developing what your spiritual gifts are if you have Saturn transiting the 12th house or Saturn in the 12th house. Now, to get a little astro geek here as we close up, we've talked about the natal chart, we've talked about transits, but there's also something called your progress chart. And this is where we can take the time you were born and we can progress your chart and we can see when certain chapters of your life are going to be activated. And when they are activated, they act as an undercurrent into what we're working with our natal promise and with our transits. I know we're getting a little deep here into the astro business, but when there's activations in your progress chart, that could be the cause of an initiation of any of these clairs that are coming loud and clear into your life. And it can also be an indicator of why something may have felt suppressed for a little bit of time. Maybe something was turned off and you were put into this 3D world and you're trying to figure out why you're stuck here because you liked it when you were able to talk to the universe and how can you adjust to that. But some transits that you would want to look for if you know your progress chart, if you're able to tap into that, would be something like the progress moon moving into Pisces or the 12th house. That's really going to call you up to spiritual service and tapping into your dreams and your insights. Or progress Mercury conjunct Neptune or Pluto that'll empower psychic communication, downloads, or that ability of mediumship. If you're checking out your progressions and you know what those are, you also would want to check out your solar arcs and see what Neptune and Pluto and these other placements are activating as well. If you're thinking, how can I tap into this energy or how can I nurture this so I can understand it on a deeper level? I do have a couple of tips and insights. One is that I would pay attention to synchronicities in your life. Those are golden nuggets. Pay attention to your dreams or fall asleep with a question or an intention to unravel something, not sit there and think about a problem and try to unpack it as you're falling asleep, but fall asleep with a meditative question. Pay attention to how you feel when you wake up, the clarity that you have, that knowing sensation when you wake up. If you're into journaling, I would definitely recommend that. You could probably find a lot of healthy downloads that way. Other tips would be meditating, breath work, connecting to nature, regulating your frequency, and turning the distractions down. And on purpose, I'm trying to keep these tips very high level because for some of you, if I were to tell you to meditate, it's going to feel like torture, probably because you have a very active Mars and your meditation will be working out. You're able to tap in that way. For some of you, writing feels like torture, but others, it's a salvation. And that all depends on your natal promise. But overall, the objective is to tune in to yourself, to be present, to be grounded, to notice how your senses are activated in your environment. What feels dull, what feels activated, and how can you work differently with this energy? If you want to go deeper into this, I don't know when you're listening to this podcast, but on April 16th, I'm going to sit down with my dear friend Casey and Colleen, a long term client, medium, and psychic. And we're going to talk more about how to awaken and work with these clairs. And if there's time after this broadcast, you'll be able to ask some questions, whether you want to ask them to Colleen about mediumship and psychic abilities, or Casey, she's a brilliant tarot reader, or even me about astrology. We'll be able to answer your questions. And if this is something that all of you are into, we can do this again and again, because I think it's very important for us to be aware of these supernatural instincts and powers that we have that help align us with our fate, with our purpose, that help us feel grounded in the chaos of creation and self expression. All right. I hope all of you found this helpful and informative. I look forward to seeing all of you on the 16th. We're going to have this as a live broadcast. You'll be able to watch it on YouTube on schedulingfate.com, Moonlight Intuitive, or Aquarius and Company. And then, of course, I'll ensure that the recording of that live broadcast is on the podcast as well. All right. I'll see you then. Have a good one.